Thank you for joining us on Coffee Break, brought to you by the Middle Alabama Area Agency on Aging, or M4A. M4A is a part of a network of 13 area agencies on aging that cover all 67 counties across the state. We are located in Alabaster, and we cover Blount, Chilton, Shelby, St. Clair, and Walker counties. We would love to find out how we can help your family today. For previous episodes of Coffee Break, feel free to check out our YouTube channel. All right, I think we've hit a pretty good number here, so we'll go ahead and kick things off, and we want to welcome everyone to Coffee Break. If this is your first time joining us, we really appreciate it, and this is something that we've had going on for quite a while now, really since the pandemic first kicked off. Last April, I believe, is when we first started things off, but today is session 25, and we're going to be talking about diabetes awareness. So like I said, this is an initiative that we started back at the early stages of the pandemic last April, I believe. It was the first one that we had. And again, this is session 25, and this is brought to you by two of our in-house programs at the Middle Alabama Area Agency on Aging, which is the PANDA Project and the Alabama Cares Caregiver Support Program. And today's speakers, we're welcoming back two of our guests that we've had a couple of times this year, and we're excited to have them back. We've got Dr. Strickland, who is a physician in the Montgomery area. He's also a part of the Montgomery Primary Medicine Associates, and his wife, Miss Carolyn Strickland, who is a licensed Food for Life instructor, and she's also a part of the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And she also is an instructor at the local YMCA there in Montgomery, and she does her best to keep Dr. Strickland out of trouble. So I know she's got her hands full with that. So, and Dr. Strickland, did you want me to go ahead and show the video?
Yeah, that could sure be a great place to start. I mean, I'm really excited about talking about diabetes. I get excited and happy about talking about diabetes because things are so different now than they were 30 years ago. When I was growing up, I grew up around physicians, and they warned me to, don't go off and marry somebody with diabetes or something. I mean, their health is just always in decline, and that is just not true now. Things are really good. We're very powerful with diabetes. And this video is going to present some of the most important ideas that can give you the power to do much better with type 2 diabetes and perhaps even cure it.
Great. And we do have one question that just came through, and it says, how does a plant-based diet affect diabetes? And I think we're probably going to have a good illustration of that and time to answer that question as we kind of move along. I'm going to go ahead and share this video that we've got prepared by Dr. Strickland. Now we'll add too, I didn't quite touch on this before we kick things off, but we are streaming this live on our Facebook feed right now. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask those questions under the comment section under this live stream video. We've got it streaming on, I think, 3 of our pages. So it's live. If you have any questions, we are recording this rather, and we will put this on our YouTube channel. So if you have any questions later on as well, feel free to send those to us or comment on our videos. We'll make sure we get those answers back to you. All right, let's see if we can kick this video off here. And you're going to have to listen a little closely. The audio is a little low, but with the recording that we're going to have, we are going to bump the volume up just a little bit. So in case you miss something, have no fear. We'll have it in a recorded video to play back for you.
These are the ideas that have really given us power over diabetes. There's a cell. The cell has a receptor that is acting like a keyhole. There's a door that can be either opened or closed. And there's a blood vessel, also called a capillary. Now the blood vessel, it carries fuel and supplies to the cell, and it carries waste products away. Now, one of the main fuels that the capillary brings to the cell is glucose. Glucose gets close to the cell, and it will diffuse out into the fluid around the cell. But that door is closed, so it can't get into the cell. And the way this glucose diffuses or drifts out all around the cell, the glucose in this area around the cell will be at about the same concentration as the glucose that's in the capillary. Now, some of the other things that the capillary carries to the cell are these keys, also called insulin. And what these keys do is they also drift out into the fluid around the cell. And some of the keys will have contact with this keyhole. When they make contact with the keyhole, a chain of events happens inside the cell that opens up this door. When this door is open, the glucose can drift into the cell. Now, the cell loves this because glucose is its favorite fuel. It burns glucose more efficiently than any other fuel. It doesn't produce as many waste products as when the cell tries to burn fat or burn ketones. Now, this whole arrangement goes wrong in type 2 diabetes. How does it go wrong? Over decades, a person takes in more calories than they burn off, and fuel or energy accumulates in the body, and it accumulates in the form of fat. And a lot of this fat will be inside the cell. And this fat will gum up the mechanism, gum up the connection between this keyhole and the door will wind up getting stuck shut. The cell will gradually burn off all of its glucose, and it's left trying to use less efficient fuels for energy. It doesn't do as well, you don't feel as good, and your body will keep trying and trying to get more glucose into the cell. Since the glucose can't get into the cell, it'll back up into this fluid around the cell. You'll get more and more glucose here, and it'll back up into the bloodstream. Now, all this extra glucose in the bloodstream, it is harmful to the bloodstream. It causes gunk to build up in the insides of the blood vessels. That gradually ruins the blood vessels, and it causes the problems that we think of when we think of the bad things that happen with diabetes. This is where we were in understanding this about 30 years ago. And we would tell people, oh, go lose 50 pounds and you'll get rid of all this fat in the cell and your diabetes will get a whole lot better. And we had a few people succeed at this, but not very many, because it's really hard to lose that fat in the cell. Now, the idea that came around, in my experience, somewhere around 10 or 15 years ago, wound up being very, very powerful. And the idea is that the fat that's causing trouble isn't just in the cell, it's also out here around the keyhole. And there's this fat that's all floating around out here, and it's actually causing a lot of the problem that is causing the glucose to be unable to get into the cell because the keyhole is blocked and the insulin can't work. And it winds up that this fat that's around the cell is very closely connected to the amount of fat that's in the bloodstream. Now, that's exciting because the amount of fat that's in the bloodstream, that can change, and that can change pretty fast because this isn't connected quite so much to the fat that you carry. It's much more connected to the amount of fat that you're consuming. So if you decrease the amount of fat that you're eating, you can make a big difference with this very quickly. So when you decrease the amount of fat that's in the bloodstream, the fat that has been around the cell starts drifting over into the blood and it gets carried away. And this makes it so that the insulin can make contact with the keyhole again and open the door. This lets the glucose start getting into the cell again. That brings a lot of this glucose back out of the bloodstream. A lot of this is getting right on into the cell. and your body's happy again. Your body can run its machinery as efficiently as possible because there's plenty of glucose in the cell. The glucose in the blood is decreased back down to a normal level or to a much closer to normal level, and everything's going a whole lot better. This very simple idea has really given us power over diabetes. I hope you find this helpful. I really think it can give you power to improve your diabetes, perhaps even cure it.
Such a simple illustration with such a huge impact. And we always give Dr. Strickland an A on his illustration production because he does such a great job. Every time we have him on, he has a great illustration. That one was no different. It was very creative with the door that you had there.
Yeah, if we could just ace the audio, things would be great.
Well, we did have the question that come through, so we want to go ahead and ask that one for sure right off the hand. And that question was, how does a plant-based diet affect diabetes?
So a diet that's fruits, vegetables, grains, beans, and water is the ideal way to decrease the amount of animal fat that you're consuming and decrease the fat in the blood. And that gradually draws the fat out of that fluid around the cell and makes it so that your insulin can get to that keyhole a whole lot better. I mean, we think, but as I understand, the experts aren't totally sure. We really think that it's the animal fats that clog up that mechanism much more than it is the plant-based fats. So if you're staying away from the meat, cheese, dairy, eggs, you're going to win this game.
All right. So we were talking obviously about type 2 diabetes. How is this different than type 1 diabetes? And can these, I guess, recommendations help for type 1 diabetics as well?
Well, I think there's a couple things to say there. One is that type 2 diabetes, you have insulin, and those fats are getting in the way of insulin completing its function, opening that door so the glucose can get in. Now, type 1 diabetes, a person actually doesn't have any insulin. They're failing to produce the insulin. So that can go, like in type 1 diabetes, it can go all the way down to 0 insulin, and then you can't open that door at all. The reason I left a little bit of glucose in the cell is because even when the fat's clogging up that keyhole, a little bit of insulin will get to the keyhole, a little bit of sugar will get in, and that makes it so that somebody with type 2 diabetes can survive, although they're getting sicker and sicker and sicker. Type 1 diabetes, the insulin can go all the way down to 0, and they're getting absolutely no sugar into the cell. And that person actually cannot survive unless they find a way to get insulin. Now, the other kind of interesting fact that I wanted to throw in there is that you might have heard of diabetic ketoacidosis. What that is because the person can't get, because in type 1 diabetes where there's no insulin, there is no insulin to trigger the keyhole. The door can't open. Glucose can't get into the cell at all. The inside of the cell is starving, and it's trying to burn other fuels just to get some energy. And that produces ketones, and it tips the balance of the acid balance towards acid in the blood. And that's what diabetic ketoacidosis is. And my suspicion, I can't say somebody taught it to me, is that essentially starvation state inside the cell and the way your body responds to it is why in type 2 diabetes, it's so hard to just flat out lose weight. It's because you're really fighting against everything your body's desperately trying to get you to do, and trying to just flat out lose weight. And that's, and I hope you can see how all that adds up to, if you eliminated the fat from your diet, then it can get all this mechanism going again and give you some relief in a reachable way.
And as a reminder, if you have any questions, again, we've got someone else, Jennifer Fuller's on the call. She's with our Panda Project. She's monitoring our Facebook, and I'm kind of helping monitor the questions here. We did have another question come through, but if you have them again on our Facebook, feel free to drop those in a comment under the Facebook video live stream, and we'll be sure to answer those live for you as well. We did have another question that came through. It says, can you explain how A1C relates to daily blood sugar numbers? Also, what is a good blood sugar number and an A1C?
So a real important thing about diabetes is it's the average blood sugar over a long period of time that really does the damage. So when you're checking the blood sugar, that blood sugar you get from pricking your finger or having a blood draw, that blood sugar is just a snapshot. It's what your blood sugar is right that second. And all through the day, your sugar is going to go up and down, up and down. And it can be difficult to have that snapshot really give you a good representation of how your average blood sugar is. And that average blood sugar is where your success or failure is. The hemoglobin A1C is a way of getting an idea of what your average blood sugar has been over about the last 6 weeks. So it gives you a more clear picture of how much damage is going on, how much glucose or sugar has been in the bloodstream or stuck in the bloodstream over the last 6 weeks. I hope that helps.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously this seems like a very easy process to do. I mean, with glucose getting into the cell, how is that such a powerful thing, especially since cells are really so small?
Yeah, so I'm talking about such a tiny thing. And that drawing I had, that capillary, it is 10 microns in diameter. That means that 100 of them could fit side by side in 1 millimeter. 2,560 of those capillaries could fit within 1 inch. Now, a cell can be up to about 10 times that size, but that's still really small, right? So it can sound like when I'm talking about this, it can, you can say, gosh, I've got a lot of blood and I've got a lot of sugar in my blood. It sounds like you're trying to get me to drain a pond with a thimble. And it seems like you can worry that, gosh, I'm not going to get anywhere. The hitch is, what kind of numbers we're dealing with. There are 30 trillion cells in your body, in an adult body. And half of those by weight are muscle cells. And that story I was telling you about with that little video, that story mainly plays out in muscle cells. So half of that 30 trillion, so say there's 15 trillion muscle cells. Now, if you had 15 trillion thimbles, you could empty Lake Martin with about 260 scoops. And I hope just trying to have that vision can help you realize you have the power to beat this.
And I'm sure that obviously, if you're in bad health, you're going to go see a physician. And then, naturally, when your health starts to get better, you're probably going to back off from that a little bit. So you may have a little bit of limited, I guess, feedback from your patients. But in general, is this something that, if you make the changes today, how quickly could someone start to see the effects of the life change?
Oh, it can be very quick. If you go from a standard American diet, meat and three meals a day, to totally plant-based, you're going to see big changes like within a week. And experts that talk about this, when I talk about it, you got to be ready for the sugars dropping too low. And a big reason that I would warn your viewers to be sure to do this hand in hand with your doctor, with your doctor's blessing, with your doctor's review of your medicines, with your doctor helping you know what to expect. Part of the reason that's so important is because you might get too healthy too fast and find yourself on too much medicine really quickly. That's especially important if you're on a sulfonylurea like glyburide or glipizide, or if you're on insulin, because those they defeat some of your body's protective mechanisms against the sugar dropping too low. Also, if you're going to switch to a plant-based diet, it's especially important to work with your physician if you're on warfarin, which is a particular blood thinner. The other blood thinners shouldn't be such an issue. But, please, if you're going to make these kind of changes, do it hand in hand with your physician. They're your teammate. I can tell you from personal experience, we enjoy taking these journeys with you.
And of course, they're the ones that's ultimately looking at the big picture here, and the long, you're seeing them on a regular basis. So obviously they're able to monitor that with you and really give you, like I said, the big picture there. All right. I don't see any more questions that have come through. Jennifer, do you see it on the Facebook feed at all?
Not right now.
All right. So I think this would be a good time to go ahead and show Dr. Strickland's wife, Miss Carolyn, who we previously mentioned at the beginning. She's actually she's provided us with a video as well of a really good, simple recipe to kind of get started on a healthy living type diet today. So I want to go ahead and show that. And then again, if you have any questions, feel free to drop those into the comments on our Facebook video live stream, or as well here in the Q&A or the chat. We will make sure that we get that answered for you.
Today we're making summer farro and peach salad. So what is farro, you might ask? Well, farro is an ancient grain that has been around for thousands of years. It is a type of wheat, so if you have celiac disease or a gluten intolerance, it is probably not a good idea to eat it because it does contain gluten. However, anyone who doesn't have celiac disease should feel free to try this grain. It's delicious. It has 6 grams of protein, 3 grams of fiber, 1 gram of fat, no cholesterol, no saturated fat, in a 1/2 cup cooked serving or a 1/4 cup dry. So what I've done is take 1 cup of dry and cooked it, and it's already cooked here. We'll fluff it up a little bit. And it makes a lot. As you can see, that's more than 1 cup. After it cooks, it almost doubles or maybe triples in size. We also need corn, which is about roughly 2 ears of corn off the cob. So if you want to, you could buy frozen corn. You could use fresh corn. This is in season right now. It's summer in Montgomery, Alabama, and so we have lots of fresh corn available. We also have some chopped fresh mint, about 3 tablespoons, and we have about 1/3 cup of freshly minced up green onions. And we have a heaping cup of fresh peaches. Peaches are also in season right now. We have some chopped up cherry tomatoes. Cherry tomatoes are in season right now. We have almonds, and this is about 1/3 cup of slivered almonds that I have toasted already. You don't have to toast them. I just think it brings out a nice flavor in them. And then 3 tablespoons of fresh lemon juice. So I think fresh lemon juice probably tastes best because it has a really nice bright and refreshing flavor, but you could also use bottled lemon juice if you don't have a fresh lemon. So, and a clove of minced garlic. So what I'm going to do is start with that clove of minced garlic. Fresh garlic is always best, but you could just substitute maybe a 1/2 teaspoon of dried garlic powder, and that could work too. So we'll take our 3 tablespoons of lemon juice and pour it into the garlic and let that garlic flavor get infused in the lemon juice. And then sprinkle just a little bit of iodized sea salt. You can leave that out if you're on a low sodium diet. And we'll let that get stirred up in there. Okay, so we're taking this delicious farro and adding it to the bowl. So farro only takes 10 minutes to cook, and it's a delicious thing to add to something like this salad. You could also toss cooked farro grains into a green salad to add a little bit more protein to it. You could add it to soups and stews. It's delicious any way you do it. It has a really nice nutty flavor and full of nutrients, and it's kind of chewy. It has a really nice texture to it. If you can't find farro, then you could use wheat berries, and that would work too. If you have celiac disease or a gluten intolerance, you could use quinoa, which has no gluten, but that will kind of change the texture of the salad a little bit. Okay, so we've added the farro, the corn, which what I bought actually is a already roasted corn. So you can see it kind of has some of these dark charred spots on it. But it's organic roasted corn from Whole Foods. And we will add our green onions and the tomatoes and the peaches, which are fresh from the farmer's market. And that is a heaping cup of peaches because we really like peaches. And get that kind of mixed up together. And we'll add in the mint. So if you don't have mint, don't like mint, you can substitute parsley, you could substitute basil. That would be really good too, some fresh chopped basil. But if you don't like mint, there's a few other things. Fresh herbs are always best, but you could substitute in some basil or parsley, or just leave it out altogether. So I've mixed this all up. It just looks so pretty, all those beautiful colors. It's just gorgeous. And then we're adding in that mixture of lemon juice with a pinch of salt and the garlic. So let that the garlic sort of infuse the lemon juice flavor all through it. So that's probably the juice of 1.5 lemons. Depends on how big your lemon is, but 3 tablespoons. I used about 1.5 lemons to get 3 tablespoons. Okay, we'll stir that all around. And then the last ingredient to go in that adds some really nice crunch is the almonds. So already toasted, slivered almonds. So you don't have to toast them. I just like the flavor of toasted almonds. And then I wouldn't add the toasted almonds into it until you are ready to actually serve the dish, because if you set it aside with the almonds in it and you don't need it until tomorrow, then the almonds are going to soak up some of that liquid that's in here and they'll become a little bit mushy. So I would probably save the almonds until right before you go to serve this dish. Summer farro and peach salad. And if this is a new grain for you, give it a try, because I think you'll find that it's really delicious. Thanks for watching.
Well, I was just making my shopping list for Whole Foods there. I tell you, just judging by the background there, it looks like the Montgomery farmers market really gets a lot of visits from you guys. You guys have a lot of good looking vegetables and fruits and veggies there in the background. We did have another question that came through, and that is, can someone who's really skinny also be at risk for type 2 diabetes?
Yes, and we actually started taking a wagon to the farmers market because we used to try to carry it all out with our arms, and it was just ridiculous. No, I'm sorry. So can someone that's skinny have type 1 diabetes?
Type 2 diabetes.
So can somebody that's skinny have type 2 diabetes? Yeah, it's totally conceivable. I mean, we talk about diabetes. I think even talking about diabetes, like, I think we get into trouble when we think that diabetes is one thing. I think we probably even get into trouble when we think that it's just 2 things, type 1 and type 2. Yeah, there are many chemicals and many organs involved in regulating your blood sugar. And there's many ways that they can go wrong. And honestly, I don't think we figured them all out yet. Now, somebody that is skinny can have type 2 diabetes. There is some chance that it could just be due to the amount of fat that you're consuming in your diet and how much it's clogging up that keyhole that I was talking about. And it may be that everything's fine if you really eliminate the fat in your diet. Now, it's certainly possible that there's other things going on. And somebody that's skinny and has diabetes, even if it develops as an adult, we should at some level be suspicious that there's a failure to produce insulin. And I mean, in a way, that's what any diabetes is anyways, is a failure to produce enough insulin to run that machinery or to overcome the amount that machinery is blocked. So that can be a rabbit hole that we could get deeper and deeper into. But I guess what I was feeling tempted to say is that when somebody gets diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, they very often had it for years, maybe even a decade. Or they've had that problem where their use of insulin has been, their body's ability to use insulin has been gummed up. And what's been going on is the pancreas works twice as hard, 3 times as hard as what it's designed, trying to produce enough insulin to overcome how much those receptors and keyholes are blocked up. And when you really tip into diabetes, into the sugar being too high, it's when the pancreas is finally getting tired and starting to fall behind. So,
all right, we had
I hope
sorry,
I
mean to
got long-winded. I'm sorry, but I hope some of that answered the question.
Absolutely. And we had another one come through as well. It says, as far as carbs go, how does that affect diabetes?
Well, I mean, we used to think that was the core of the issue. And now I really think now that we know it is not. I did a lot at the beginning of my career I felt like I was doing what I was told and trying to fight against diabetes by fighting against carbohydrates. And we had very little success. The root of the problem with type 2 diabetes is a problem with that keyhole getting gummed up by fat. And eliminating the fat is the way to get at the underlying root cause of type 2 diabetes. Where carbohydrates really become important is when you have type 1 diabetes and you need to match the amount of insulin that you're being given as a shot. You need to match the amount of insulin you're being given to the amount of carbohydrates coming in. Because if you get too much insulin, you get too much glucose drawn into the cell and you don't have enough glucose in your bloodstream. There's parts of your body, like your brain, that have to have glucose in order to function. So your sugar gets low, you feel woozy. I mean, your brain can also run on ketones, but that doesn't get going very fast. And it's a very inefficient way for your brain to run. And so you won't feel as good.
Well, and you talked a lot about animal fat, obviously. And so, thinking kind of switching gears there, I mean, obviously a fish is an animal, but does the same rules apply to eating fish as well? Because you often hear that eating fish is a little healthier than maybe hamburger meat or whatever. So I just didn't know if there was a difference in the types of meat.
Yeah, so I had probably a decade where we were eating a lot of fish because the message was that it was the healthy thing to do. Well, it winds up a lot of that was from what's called the Iceland study. And because people that were eating people in Iceland, they were having a lot of fish, they were having a lot fewer heart attacks than the rest of us. So I mean, that seemed from what I could tell, that was the core information that had us all enthusiastic about eating a lot of fish and perhaps even taking supplemental omega-3 fatty acids, trying to imitate what's probably in that fish. But in the last 8 or 10 years, that Iceland study has really been scrutinized. And what is it really showing? What is it really saying? I mean, one aspect of that study is that those people in Iceland, they're eating wild caught, cold water, deep water fish. And that is not what we're getting around here. Around here, you'll get farm raised fish, and that is very different. And the other thing with the Iceland study is that, I mean, it's believed, and I can't say that I've been privy to the dissection of that study, but what's been presented to me is that the people in that study were eating much less animal products, including much less meat than the American diet. And it really looks like the reason people in that study in that region were having less heart attacks is much more because they were having less animal products, including less meat, and their diet was much more close to fruits, vegetables, grains, beans, and water.
And speaking of diet, I know that you touched on ketosis a little bit, but as far as, popular trends, obviously the keto diet is a really popular trend right now. How does that affect diabetes? Does it have any major impact, any major negativity or positivity for results?
Yeah, I mean, it can be horrible for diabetes. There is a little bit of a trade-off. I mean, you lose a bunch of weight, and that can get some of that fat out of the inside of the cell. Some things can look favorable for a little while. But a big thing with the keto diet is that it's not sustainable. You're going to build up waste products. You're going to feel worse and worse. Those animal products, the animal products you're tending to consume on the keto diet, they are going to increase your risk of heart attack and stroke. They're not going to be, losing the body weight can be favorable for the diabetes, but it's not a great trade to have increased fat and that fluid that's out around the cell. And another big thing with the keto diet, and another big thing to talk about a plant-based diet, there was a study done recently that showed that compared to kind of a neutral standard diet, if you had much more fruits, vegetables, grains, beans, and water, you have a 73% less chance of having severe disease if you catch COVID. And that's powerful. A plant-based diet is associated with a 73% decreased risk of severe disease if you catch COVID. If you, compared to a standard diet, if you go to a keto diet, you've got a 51% increase risk of, turn on your mic, Carolyn.
Yeah, 48% increased risk of severe symptoms with the keto diet.
So yeah, I've got my wife to help me stay true. So so you've got if you have a keto diet compared to a standard American diet, you'll have a 48% increased risk of having severe disease if you catch COVID.
Right.
Which is a really good, we had just mentioned the question previously was, is someone skinny susceptible to type 2 diabetes as well? So that kind of tells you a little bit that sometimes, even though you might be losing weight, that might not be a good example of maybe how you look on the inside. So that's not always, the indicator of how you look on the outside.
Exactly. Yeah, go ahead.
We did have a couple other questions come through here as well. With our program specifically, especially with the Panda Project as well, we care for a lot of caregivers who are caring for loved ones with numerous types of dementia related diagnoses, and obviously vascular dementia is one of those things. With all the talk about diabetes and cardiovascular systems, is this a risk factor for someone who could potentially go down the path of having a dementia related diagnosis?
Yes, very much. Look, one of these M4A coffee breaks, it must have been maybe 4 months ago, we talked about dementia and the risk for getting dementia. And what they found is they'll do somebody having the first hint of memory difficulty. Some of those people get really bad over the next decade. Some stay about the same. They don't get a whole lot worse. And what makes the difference between those two people? Well, a person that's first getting the hint of memory difficulty, they do that MRI scan. And what they did was they just counted the number of blood vessels on the MRI images that have atherosclerosis, that have a buildup of gunk inside the blood vessel. And this could certainly be somebody that's had blood sugars running high for a long time and having that stuff build up on the insides of the blood vessel. The people that had the most blood vessels affected by atherosclerosis were the people by far most likely to progress to severe disease with dementia over the coming years. So yeah, if you've got that first hint of memory difficulty, That's a very important opportunity to really clean up your diet, do everything you can to have your blood vessels be healthy, and that'll decrease your risk of going on to debilitating disease with dementia.
And you may have covered this and I might have missed it, but we also had a question that came up that says, as far as type 1, type 2, do they have the equal amount of effect as far as, on the vascular system itself?
Yeah, regardless of what causes the glucose to build up in the bloodstream, it's going to cause trouble.
Well, this has been Jennifer. I don't know if there's any questions on our Facebook live stream, and Miss Carey.
That first questioner, I did leave out a response to one part of her question. She was asking what a goal hemoglobin A1C would be. Now, hemoglobin A1C, if it's higher than 5.8, that's enough to say that it's abnormal. That's enough to give you a diagnosis of impaired fasting glucose, anything higher than 5.8. Anything higher than 6.5 is enough to say that you've got diabetes. Now, generally, we'll add medicines if the hemoglobin A1C is significantly higher than 7. It might be somewhere around 7.5, 7.8 that we might start adding medicines. And for a long time, our goal has generally been to try to get the hemoglobin A1C lower than 7. But if it's between 7 and 7.5, especially if somebody's over 60 or so, that's probably our sweet spot. That's probably a good spot to be. The reason I say sweet spot is because if you get it too low, especially if you're using medicines like insulin or glipizide or glyburide, you've got the risk of the sugars dropping too low and giving you an immediate danger with that. So higher than 5.8, you start getting diagnoses. Higher than 7 or 7.5, you start getting medications. Now, normal is down somewhere between like 4.3 and 5.5. And I've seen people, by really improving their diet, get their sugars down that low to where they're really truly flat out normal.
And I guess that was going to be my next question, because I know, and I'm going to give you guys the opportunity to kind of talk about other things that you do in the community. I know that you're involved with several different groups and, certain things that you do on certain nights on social media. But with your experience, both being a physician and the community, Ms. Carolyn, you as well, have you guys seen a lot of success in reversing diabetes from patients, from, colleagues, friends, people that are kind of involved in the, in the programs that you're involved in?
Yes. Yes. We have one particular former student who's now a friend that I'm thinking of. We taught a class at her church. Gosh, when was that? 2017? God, it's hard to believe that was in 2017. So 4 years ago. It was a 7-week program that we did at her church. And when we first started the program, her hemoglobin A1C was 12.2, which, as my husband just mentioned, anything over 6 is not so good. 12.2 was really bad. We started working with them in June, and by August, her A1C had dropped to 5.2.
Wow. And
she was texting me every morning and saying, "Oh my gosh, my blood sugar is 81. I don't know what to do. Is that bad?" And I said, "No, that's normal." And she had never had it be normal before. She was kind of freaked out that she had normal blood sugar. And her doctor told her he wasn't going to take her off her medicines because he didn't really believe that she would stick with the diet. But she has for over 4 years now. And exactly 4 years, actually, is because this is August. So yeah, she stuck with it for 4 years. She's a caterer and she fixes food for other people in her community. And she's a really good cook, but she's lost probably 30, 40 pounds. Her A1C is now 4.3. Her blood sugar averages in the low 80s every day. She doesn't have to take any medicine. And when we met her, she had 19 medicines a day she was taking, and she's down to 0 medicines a day. She is now 66. So yeah. I mean, yes, we've seen success. I would call that remission of type 2 diabetes. So,
and kind of on that same discussion, obviously, a full force plant-based diet might not be for everyone as far as their opinion. So obviously, any small changes I'm sure would make a heck of a lot of difference, especially if you're so used to, like me, running the roads, eating fast food, doing terrible things. Any good habits are going to have some good impacts, I'm sure. But for you guys now, obviously for us, we're based out of the Birmingham region. We have 5 counties that kind of surround Jefferson County that we serve, and you guys are down in the Montgomery area. But on that same accord, do you guys have, are there initiatives that you're doing virtually, or that, maybe if there's anybody interested within our region that's interested in maybe traveling down to meet with you guys, how would they find more information out about, the things that you guys do, and to kind of get started with working with you guys?
Well, we do the last Monday of every month, we do something on Facebook called Meatless Monday Montgomery, but you don't have to be in Montgomery to watch it. You just have to be on Facebook. So Meatless Monday Montgomery, 6 o'clock, the last Monday of every month. So that's coming up this coming Monday. Usually I do a cooking demo and my husband talks about a health topic. This time it's actually going to be a little bit different. We're going to be interviewing, and I'll grab it. We have, we're interviewing the author of this book called Food is Climate. Glenn Merzer is a best-selling author who has written several books with Chef AJ, and Chef AJ is well known in the plant-based world as being a plant-based chef. And so together they've written several books, but this one, Food is Climate, just came out last week and I'm in it. So I actually have a section of recipes in it. So that's why we're interviewing him to talk about his book. And if we have time, I'll cook something out of the book. Usually it's my husband talking about a health topic and me cooking something. The other thing we have going on right now is that we have started a YouTube channel. So you don't have to be in Montgomery to go to the YouTube channel. It's just on YouTube, called Strickland's and Friends, a seasonal whole food plant-based cookbook. But because YouTube limits how many words you can put in, it actually says Strickland's and Friends, a seasonal WFPB cookbook, because we couldn't put all the words in there. So it's Strickland's and Friends, and there are cooking videos, and he'll probably upload his diabetes talk on there too, so people can see that on the YouTube channel. But we're trying to get more things uploaded to that. I want to do some very simple recipes, probably pretty soon, one on just how to make brown rice, like just really basic. How do you cook brown rice? So instead of complicated, there's a few complicated things on there, but.
And if you rewind this video to where there was the video that I made last night, the title screen for that has the name of our YouTube channel on it. Strickland,
right.
Friends, a seasonal diet.
Cookbook, seasonal whole food plant-based cookbook.
Yeah.
And Jennifer she added both your Facebook page, looks like an event in there as well. I guess that's probably the Meatless Monday, as well as the YouTube channel there as well. And she just put the cookbook. We did have another question come through, which was actually one that I was going to ask. As far as publications, cookbooks, this question in particular is there a recommended cookbook that includes simple recipes? And that was going to be kind of my question too. Not only just that, but just in general, plant-based diet. Is there a good publication cookbook that you guys recommend to kind of get things started?
Look, if you've got the time, let me just rattle off 10,000 recipes to you real quick. Okay. So let me start. What you do is you have a layer of a grain, a layer of a bean, a layer of a green, meaning a green vegetable, a green leafy vegetable, a layer of some other vegetable, and a sauce. What I just gave you is over 10,000 recipes, because each layer has more than 10 options. And if you multiply it out using some high school math, there's over 10,000 options there. Okay. So it's a layer of a grain, a layer of a bean, a layer of a green, a layer of a vegetable, and a sauce. It looks like a meal. It sits on your stomach like a meal. It sticks with you like a meal. And you've got a lot of room to play with it within that structure.
Oh, and an example. Here's an example that we came up with yesterday. There's a vegan restaurant in Montgomery now called PlantBased, and they're about to this fall have a new menu item on their menu called the Strickland Seasonal Bowl. And so it will be a bowl just like what my husband mentioned. It's going to have
It'll just be one though, right?
and just one bowl for the fall.
At a time?
And then so we're going to change it up every season. But so the owner of the restaurant and I talked about it yesterday. So we came up with, here's an example: quinoa as the grain, black beans, roasted sweet potatoes, and collard greens. So that's your green and your grain and your bean and the vegetable, the sweet potatoes. And then we're going to drizzle probably a creamy chipotle sauce over the top of it, or she'll have the option of a ranch dressing if somebody doesn't want spicy, and then maybe some microgreens on top. But that's an example of one. So, bowls are always an easy thing to do. If you could make that's like a Tex-Mex kind of Southwestern fall bowl with the sweet potatoes and the black beans. You can totally change it up and make it more of like a Middle Eastern flair and do roasted cauliflower and broccoli and brown rice and maybe like a lemon tahini dressing over it or something with chickpeas and lemon tahini dressing. That's one of our favorites. We eat that all the time. There's just so many different ways to, if you think of any grain you can think of, like farro that I just used in that cooking that example with the cooking video, the farro peach salad. Farro is a wonderful grain. So add,
it's even more fun when you start finding grains that you can't think of. And
well,
research.
There's so many millet and
everyone
amaranth,
texture, a little bit of a different flavor, and it's fun.
Right.
It's a way of playing food.
Right, exactly. So with people who have children in their lives that they're trying to deal with, I know I can tell you several different cookbooks, but also websites that have really good recipes. Fatfreevegan.com. She has lots of good recipes on there, and it may be blog.fatfreevegan.com. It may be her blog. But also, this is one of my favorites when you have children. Mayim Bialik, everyone knows, like from Jeopardy, Mayim Bialik, who's a neuroscientist, also eats a plant-based diet, and she has for many, many years. Mayim is brilliant. Obviously, PhD in neuroscience from Princeton. She's a brilliant woman. And she's been eating plant-based for many years. She has a book called Mayim's Vegan Table, which she has little kids. And so these are recipes that she developed because her kids like them, and they're all really easy. There's some really good recipes in here. Her lentil shepherd's pie is probably one of my favorites ever. And I make it all the time. So I really recommend her book. There's another one that I can't find right now. The Plant Pure Nation has a cookbook that's excellent with a lot of basic recipes. The Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, who I work for, I'm a Food for Life instructor with PCRM. So if you go to pcrm.org, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, just put the initials in, pcrm.org, and then go to recipes, and there's tons of recipes. They're all very simple. Some of them I don't think are very flavorful. So because they don't make things spicy or whatever, they're kind of bland. So just spice it up, add hot sauce, whatever, if you need to make it a little more flavorful.
Forks Over Knives, the movie,
right.
It really kind of got us started. It's what set me on this path. And they've got a couple Forks Over Knives cookbooks also.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So you could watch the movie Forks Over Knives, look up the cookbooks that are under Forks Over Knives.
Well, Forks Over Knives has a few different cookbook options. There's they have a Forks Over Knives easy recipes, Forks Over Knives for families. There are several, and Forks Over Knives has an app you can put on your phone, which then also has a lot of recipes on it.
Yeah,
so
talk about the 21-day kickstart. How do you find it?
And 21 kick, yes, that's PCRM, who I work for, has a 21-day kickstart. So if you go to Google Play Store or your app store on Apple and look up 21-day vegan kickstart, because we have figured out that it takes people about 21 days to have those addictive feelings go away, where, oh my gosh, I think I'm going to die if I don't eat some cheese. So those feelings go away after about 21 days. There's a lot of reasons for that. There's probably would be an entire other class that we could talk about, but food addiction is real. But if you go to PCRM and look up the 21-day Kickstart, or you can get the app for it. They'll send you recipes every single day. They'll remind you, they'll send you, and it's free, and they'll send you lists of things, lists of ingredients, with articles and all kinds of stuff. So it's, you know, it's super helpful and it's free. So
Yeah,
can't beat that.
Last patient I saw that is really, I mean, he's doing tremendously well with his diabetes. He's still on one medicine, but he's really getting the upper hand. He started out with the 21-day Kickstart on the app.
And I'll add too, you guys were mentioning, and there's several comments in the chat feature that are showing, you know, different resources that they've mentioned. But I will add too, because, you know, oftentimes, especially with plant-based diet, it's viewed a certain way in society as far as, you know, this isn't really for athletes. This isn't really for people who are trying to tone up and that sort of thing. And I'll say that the documentary that really was the most eye-opening experience for me, and I believe that Forks Over Knives, Game Changers. Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's I think both of those are actually on Netflix right now for free. So, well, you pay for Netflix, but you can get it as far as your Netflix account goes. But another thing I wanted to add too, Dr. Strickland, now, whenever you were going over the layers, now a little bit of that rhymed, and we fully anticipate having a jingle with that on the YouTube channel as the introductory song. So we're looking forward to that.
Yeah, you know, we need a jingle. That's a good idea.
Oh, yeah. Oh, speaking of other resources. Okay, so I forgot about this one. This is kind of major. I'm on the TV show So Many Cooks in the Kitchen. And So Many Cooks in the Kitchen is a once a month show that's live on Facebook. And you have to put in the words "So Many Cooks in the Kitchen," like the whole thing, and then you'll find us. We're also on YouTube, So Many Cooks in the Kitchen, and on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, I think it's Roku or Hulu, I can't remember, but we're everywhere. But we have a show that airs live once a month. And so it's this coming Saturday at 1:00 Central Time. And again, September 10th, we'll be doing it again September 10th. But this month it's cool cooking, so much cool cooking. And we have a different topic every time. And it's food for life instructors just like me, who we all make something. We talk about it ahead of time in our little private chats about what we're all going to make, so nobody makes the same thing. And this time it's cool cooking. So how to keep your kitchen cool and still eat without having to heat everything up, in the heat of August. So, and then September, we'll be talking about some of our favorite food for life recipes, the things that we actually teach in our in-person classes. So it's a lot of fun.
If I could say two things, Jeremy. One is, if anybody that's interested, if you could get out your cell phone right now, and while you're fumbling around for your cell phone, go ahead and open up your app store. Okay. Now, while you're fumbling with that, I'll say my 2 cents about the foods is that, look, you can make it complicated. You can make complicated, delicious, gorgeous dishes. If you tune into our YouTube channel, you'll see Carolyn cooking dishes that are like a peacock fluffing up its feathers. Okay. But then you'll see me doing something that is, oh my gosh, so simple. And very few ingredients. Just learning how to cut up a watermelon, how to cut up a cantaloupe, how to peel an orange as quickly as possible so you can eat a lot of them. How to get things done quickly and simply. Personally, I think that would be the key for me if I was on a desert island and heaven forbid Carolyn wasn't with me to take care of me. Now, for those of you who have your app store opened up, what I want you to type in is the number 21, the word day, D-A-Y, and then another space. And then you could put in vegan and another space, Kickstart. Even after you typed in 21 day, on down that list was probably the 21-day vegan Kickstart. What you should be seeing are a couple apps, and it's usually like the second app is this kind of faint green logo. And that's the 21-day Kickstart by the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. You could look at the description a little bit to be sure you've got the one by the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. If you just download that onto your phone, you can start whenever you want, and it can be a very powerful way of getting a start with a lot of support. They'll give you recipes and all that, and shopping lists and motivation.
Kind of simplifies it for you a little bit. And one thing we really didn't touch on too much is just overall immunity. I mean, what better time than to try to build up your immunity than the last couple of years. So, you know, and of course, the farmers markets are still going active right now, and that helps to support the local community. So definitely an encouraging presentation. And again, like Dr. Strickland mentioned a while ago, he was talking about his video at the beginning. If you missed any of that, we are recording this, so we will make sure, you know, you'll have like an edited version that you'll have all this information if you missed anything. And, you know, I know that we were working with Miss Carolyn to get the recipe too. So we'll probably include that in the edited video at the end. So we really hope that you guys appreciate this presentation. Again, this is our coffee break series. And again, we can't thank Dr. Strickland and Miss Carolyn enough for joining us. This is, I think, the third time. So you guys are regulars at this point for sure. And we always appreciate the great advice that you bring and the uplift, and hopefully it can help make a difference in not only our caregivers, but also those that they're caring for. Again, we're the Middle Alabama Area Agency on Aging. We're located just under Birmingham in the Alabaster region, but we cover 5 counties, including Chilton, Blount, St. Clair, Walker, and Shelby counties. But I won't kind of go through our whole spiel here, but we cover the entire state. Here's kind of our network of 13 area agencies on aging. And then here's our contact information towards the end. Here we go. And if you have any questions about what we do, feel free to give us a call. Basically, we're what's called an area agency on aging, and we provide supportive services for those living within our communities. And our tagline there that you see is assisting all ages at all stages. So it's really best to just call us if you have any questions about resources, because that's really what we are by nature, as a resource center. So feel free to reach out to us. We have several different in-house programs that are sure to help your situation. And again, this is our coffee break series. We do these once a month. Our next one is scheduled for the last Wednesday of September, which is September the 29th from 1 to 2 p.m. And we will be reviewing over falls prevention. So we thank you guys again for joining us, both from an attendee standpoint, as well as our panelists who always do a great job. And we look forward to seeing you guys next month on session number 26, Falls Prevention Awareness for Coffee Break.